Oh, hi, Ian. Did I?
Cause.
Let me just get that.
Hello, my camera's not working, so I'll reboot and it might come on again. Okay.
Okay.
Just looking at a photo.
Okay. I'm going to be sharing the screen. Do let me know if you can see it.
I can, yes.
Try and max. Oh, sorry. There we go.
And can you see the camera and the chat at the same time, or can you only see your screen now?
I can see very little of the camera, a few people, but I can't see the chat. So
Sure.
Ian would assist us there.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Another couple of minutes and I think we can go and
Yes,
people
sure.
will join us. I hope everyone's had their cup of tea today.
Not yet, actually.
Oh, do you want to go quickly grab one?
I'll get some water, actually.
Okay, should we go ahead? I'd like to introduce Nazim Shah, who is our trustee, as well as a senior solicitor at LEAZ. We plan to go through the memorandum and article of association today. I did put down points we would be covering in this session. Since I have my screen taken by the Word document, I wouldn't be able to read those points, but we will be covering and touching up nearly all of those topics in there. And feel free to ask questions, put it in the chat, or do raise your hand, and Nazim would be able to ask you, answer those for you. Please do put in your name and organization under if you have your picture up or your video up or not, so it's easier to communicate. Thank you and welcome everybody. Over to you, Nazim.
Thank you, Nyoka. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for taking some time out on a lovely evening to listen to me speak about something which most people would find quite dry as a subject, but one of those things which are extremely important to the voluntary sector and not-for-profit organizations. And I'll hopefully go through the necessity of having well-drafted and accurate governing documents, because people sometimes underestimate the importance of governing documents because they seem to be full of quite dry rules on what the quorum is and how to recruit members. And sometimes people think, well, what's the point of that? Why can't we just do it informally? Well, the problem is that as a not-for-profit or an incorporated organization or as a charity with the Charities Commission, you need a set of rules with which to operate. And your powers and your ability to carry out the functions that you want and the services you want to provide are confined within your governing documents. And by governing documents, sorry, I do mean your articles of association, your objects clause. Unless you're an old organization, I don't think you'll have a memoranda, but some organizations do. Now, the objects clause is basically what you are saying to everybody else, your purposes. So your objects clause defines the types of services and the user groups who you will be providing those services to. So if you're a charity dealing in prevention of poverty or relief of poverty, it has to say that in your objects clause, and you don't need too much detail. It can say, you know, we will take all reasonable steps to prevent poverty in the following diasporas or in the following groups or in a certain geographical location or within a certain age range. Once you have that there, that's fine. The important thing to note is, I mean, there's a changing landscape at the moment. If you want to do something different, that would need to be included in your objects clause. Otherwise, you'd be doing something which is called ultra vires, or in normal speak, it's you'd be acting outside of the rules. Your decisions could be challenged and you could be personally liable if any members or any other organization wanted to challenge you on that. So that's your objects clause, a very important document. It's basically telling the world what you are there trying to achieve with your charity. And the articles of association are the rules and regulations your organization has to follow in order to conduct its day-to-day business. So it'll determine whether trustees can charge for their normal services, because trustees are volunteers and they normally have day jobs. If somebody has an expertise in accounting or in law or in any other subject that they normally practice during the day, and they can give you a knockdown rate because they work with you, unless your articles of association allow you to pay them, you won't be able to. So these are the sort of things which can save you a lot of money in the long term, because you can utilize the expertise and that trust, the relationship of trust between trustees and the organizations, knowing that you'll get some quality work done at a discounted price by one of your management committee. And if you don't have those clauses, then you'll have to go to a outside provider and get charged possibly the full market rate. So then there's also the issue of recruiting new members, because as we know, management committees grow older, and there's also the issue of being able to employ staff or buy your leased premises. All of this has to be specified in your governing documents for you to be able to do that. So that's why these two items are important. Now, when it comes to your governing documents, if you want to make any amendments to them, if you are a charity, you need the permission of the Charities Commission in order to make any kind of change to your governing document. And if the amendment is either unclear to your articles, or it's a purpose which is not recognized as a charitable purpose by the Charities Commission, they will likely refuse. So it's at that time that you probably need some advice as to the way forward. If you have people on your board, that's really helpful. So if you have a lawyer or somebody similar on the board, they can give you some informal advice, but you may need formal advice for insurance purposes or to deal with the Charities Commission and to satisfy funders that you're actually taking steps in the right direction. If you are regulated by the Charities Commission, you have an ongoing obligation to ensure that your charity is fit for purpose. Now, fit for purpose is not simply that you've got funding, it's also carrying out a risk audit. It's ensuring the reputation of the charity is not lost through acts or events which are irresponsible or negligent, or you manage the charity's funding in a matter which is in accordance with your fiduciary duties as a trustee or a director. All of these things are looked at by the Charities Commission, and all of these things are regulated by the Articles of Association. So, and please, sorry, I'm not trying to scare anyone. If I don't want anybody to go away thinking this is difficult, or it's basically common sense, but it has to be spelled out so that people know what is expected of them, and service users and members of the charity know what they can expect from either committee members, trustees, or those people employed by and running the organization on a day-to-day basis. Now, the Charities Commission has 5 aims, and they will defend these and pursue these aims vigorously if they think that a charity is flaunting or flouting any of these rules. The first one is a public confidence objective, public benefit objective. Actually, I should slow down and go through each one of these individually. The public confidence objective is normally engaged where charities have an issue with accounts, annual returns, where there's financial irregularities, or where people are simply not following the governing documents in quite a serious manner. And that brings the public confidence into play, where the public trust and confidence in charities would likely be eroded if the Charities Commission allowed charities to act in that manner. The public benefit objective is more to do with your objects clause. So are the objectives you are claiming in your objects clause charitable purposes or not? I'll be coming onto the charitable purposes further down, but that's what will be looked at by the Charities Commission. Then there's the compliance objective. Are the charity trustees complying with their legal obligation? Have they got adequate risk controls? Have they got insurance in place in case something happens? Have they looked at recruitment coming forward for the next 5 to 10 years? Do they have a business plan? Is the charity still viable? All of that would be engaged if there's a compliance concern. And also linked to that is the charitable resource objective, or the accountability objective, where you have to be transparent and accountable to your members and to the Charities Commission in the activities that you undertake. So I know it's quite a lot to take in, but this document will be available to you. So if you do need to refer back to it, please do. I might be going at quite a brisk pace. If I am, just put a message up in the group chat and I will try and slow down. And once again, if you have any questions which are not fact specific, just put them up in the chat and I will try to answer them as we go along. So if your articles of association or your objects clause is not fit for purpose, sorry, is somebody trying to say something? No, that's fine. Okay, so if your articles of association or your objects clause is not fit for purpose, that's when the Charities Commission could come in and say, well, actually, hang on, you were here for the prevention or relief of poverty, and you're actually trying to provide educational advice or educational services. That's a different objective to what you said you were going to be doing, and we need to hold you accountable. Or if you're running at a loss and you're likely to go under as a charity, the Charities Commission could likely be interested in your accounts and to see how you're running, to see if it's something that you've done or whether it's just the natural financial landscape which has changed, which has caused that. So it's always important to be thinking that can we make our governing documents, our articles of association or objects clause more relevant and better worded? And if the Charities Commission were to look at this, is there something that they could pick a fault in or criticize us for? Because if they start looking into it and they can criticize you something, they most likely will, if it's a serious concern. So once you do that, you can come on to the next aspect, which is deciding and determining whether your governing documents are fit for purpose. And there's a number of reasons why you would want to do this to ensure that your governing documents are fit for purpose. Firstly, it's the Charities Commission, as explained. Secondly, funders. Funders can ask to see your articles of association and your objects clause to see if you have the authority or the power to carry out any of the funding activities that you may be bidding for. The local authority may be interested to see if you are actually fit and competent to do what you're claiming to be doing. If you have any links with the local authority or you're providing services with other charities, they may want to see that the person or the organization that they're partnering with has the ability to do what they want them to do. So in this modern landscape of networking and joined up working and collaboration, it's important to know what you can and can't do, and that is your governing documents. They will determine what you can do. Just as a source of information, the charitable purposes that are defined now in the Charities Act 2011 are the following. If you look on the screen, there they are, and it's things like the prevention or relief of poverty, advancement of religion, advancement of education, health, arts and culture, amateur sport, human rights, diversity, all of the things that you would normally expect to find a voluntary sector organization carrying out. That's not to say these are the only recognized forms of charitable purposes. There is a catch-all section under M which says any other purpose which doesn't fall into any of the above but are recognized as charitable purposes. So something like a homeless shelter or providing food or a food bank, which may not necessarily fall squarely with any of the above. Well, maybe a food bank would be under the prevention or relief of poverty, but it might be a hybrid between a church providing a food bank or another voluntary organization. And unless your objects clause allows for that, you wouldn't be able to do that or take part in that activity formally. But it would be seen as any other activity or any other purpose which could be capable of being a charitable purpose. I mean, take the example of providing free legal advice. Although it might not fall squarely within any of the above, but if it touches on any of the above defined activities between A to L, and it doesn't charge and it's done purely for the public benefit, that could be a charitable purpose. And I think that's where law centers come in and citizens advice bureaus, because they don't always have activities which fall between A to L, but they are recognized as not-for-profits and they are registered with the Charities Commission at times as well. So that's an important thing to have in the back of your mind. Just because it doesn't fit into one of the pigeonholes, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not charitable. But if you have that sort of a question, then you probably would need legal advice to try and figure that out, because if you get it wrong, you can't operate, or you can't carry out the project that you want. And if once you've worded the amendment to any objects clause or article of association, you then have to make sure that it does what you want it to do, rather than tie you up in knots in other ways or restrict you in ways that you hadn't considered. So yeah, another aspect to the fit to purpose is finding new trustees, and a lot of charities actually have this problem where they have difficulties in recruiting new members. What that basically means is, if your charity's constitution says you need 8 trustees to operate and you can only get 5, you're going to have problems on a governance level, which would mean that you couldn't effectively carry out day-to-day activities. That could cause you loss of funding, loss of staff, loss of reputation, and your circle of influence could decline, stopping you operating effectively in the future because of that as well. So what you would need to do is make sure your governing documents allow you to be flexible in recruiting members. It doesn't say that all members have to agree, or there has to be a vote amongst all the members if there's 300 as to who becomes the next trustee, because things like that could be a problem. So basically, if you had the members present at the next AGM would be the quorum, and a simple majority vote would decide who gets elected, that would be really quite helpful, because it wouldn't tie your hands up on certain numbers or other formalities, or if people could be co-opted to the board. So you have a skills audit and you find that you need people with IT experience or legal experience or financial experience to come onto the board. If you can't wait until the AGM, which might be 11 months away or 10 months away, if your constitution allows you to co-opt members onto the board, that's a very useful stopgap until the next AGM, when they can be properly brought on board. So fit for purpose covers all of these things, and it's rather important people pay mind to that before there are any problems, because once you find there is a problem, it's time consuming and resource consuming. I can tell you as a lawyer, as a solicitor, if there's a problem with governing documents or there's a dispute and you're approached by an organization, that can be extremely expensive for the organization. Not because we want to actually make sure it's expensive, but simply because once there's a dispute, it's potentially litigation, and the charges for that and the procedures involved in that are vastly different to an internal review by the organization itself. As a general overview, you might be wondering how to amend governing documents, and the simple answer to that is it depends on the constitution, because that will contain the rules as to how you change any of its contents. Now, I've worked with constitutions where a certain part of the constitution doesn't require any formality, the trustees can change it, but half of the constitution dealing with meetings and quorums and recruitment and financial matters requires a 50% vote of half the membership at an annual general meeting. Then there's other constitutions which only require the trustees to have that meeting. I mean, you've probably seen some of the acronyms up there. There's CIOs, CICs, community interest organizations, community interest charities. They each have their own form of governance, and they each have different articles of association. You can have bespoke articles of association, which defines whether you have lifetime members, where you want to do something completely differently to everyone else. Problem with these is they are difficult and sometimes unwieldy, and you're trying to get to the bottom of how to work within their rules can often lead to conflict and contradictions, and that's when you might find some members challenge you legally, saying you're acting out of rights and you can't make those decisions, and that's the sort of thing you want to stay away from. That there's rules as to whether you have to have a written copy of the amendment, how many days before. I think the Charity Commission recommends it should be in writing 14 days before any AGM, and also some constitutions would also, good constitutions would specify that. Some constitutions allow you to make amendments if all the members unanimously agree, even without an AGM. Others say it has to be at an AGM. So there's variations and details that need to be looked at on a case-by-case basis, but it's something that once you do consider, it would be helpful. And if you think that you've got the wrong constitution, or you need another constitution, or you need a constitution if you haven't got one already, there are ways and means of doing that. Some of the times you have to completely dissolve the charity and then set up a new one. In other cases, you can adopt a new constitution depending on the type of charity and the type of governing documents you have. Again, that's something that's quite specialized, and you probably would need legal advice before you do anything of the sort. Giving aid overseas is absolutely allowed. It's that falls under the public benefit test. I'm addressing the question here. Giving aid overseas is a charitable purpose, as long as it's not too narrow. The public benefit test will look at what section of a location is being assisted. So if it's one street in Paris, say, or one village in Afghanistan, maybe not. That might be too narrow. But if it's a certain disparate geographical location, say a region or a county or even a town, say in Pakistan or Iraq, or somewhere in Africa or the Middle East, that can be argued as assisting a certain number of people for it to become a public benefit, and that's the test that will be looked at. Is it benefiting a large enough number of members of the public for it to be a public benefit? If the people are not related to you, or you don't know them personally, they don't belong to a certain specific geographic location, then yes, giving aid overseas can count as a charitable purpose, as long as it falls within the charitable purposes mentioned above. So it has to be aid overseas for healthcare, prevention or relief of poverty, education, religion, So if it's falling within one of them, then yes, overseas aid can form a charitable purpose. Sorry, that's probably a bit long-winded, but okay. So where to from here? I think going back to your own organizations, you might want your management committees or your management to have a look at their governing documents, their constitution, their objects clause. There is a changing landscape to funded activities at the moment. You might be looking at 5 years in the future and thinking, what services will funders be funding in 5 years' time? And are we able to bid for those, or are we likely going to be able to bid for those with the constitution and the objects clause that we have? That's something that you will have to decide as a charity, and something that your management committee will have to deal with. So I think I've come to the point where I could talk incessantly about this, but what I want to do is ask if you guys have any questions now over what I've said, or if you need clarification on anything, because that probably would be the best way forward now. There's not much else I can say without going over what I've already talked to you about. Lisa, let me see if I...
Hello, Nazim. At the beginning, you said about boards of directors who have a particular expertise that we may be using. So I'm not a charity. We are a sports club, and it is a volunteer administered. We are a constituted, unincorporated organisation at the moment.
Yeah.
I think we need to maybe look at that in the future, but probably not the charity status.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but if someone tells me different, that's what because we do want to be. We have started to be doing a lot of more outreach work and partnership with local charities.
Yeah.
But my main question is, so we have experience of the committee members. They say that they step up, but then realise that they haven't got the time, and then don't really do the work that's needed. I suggested that to make them more accountable and being able to say, right, we do like 2 hours a week, for instance, we offer maybe their children discounted fees or club kit. Is that acceptable?
That's you're not incorporated, so you don't have any governing documents. So there's nothing technically stopping you from doing so. But what you have to remember is that whether it's incorporated or not, the trustees will have a fiduciary duty not to benefit from their work as volunteers of the charity, and the management committee are volunteers. So if they're going to be benefiting in any way over others, that might be seen as an inducement, as a benefit, that could be problematic. The other thing I want to stress is, although you're not incorporated at the moment, the benefit of having an incorporated charity, whether it's a limited company or a CIO or any other form, where is it limits the liability of trustees. So because you're running a charitable or a voluntary organization dealing with sports and amateur sports, I believe, which is capable of being a charitable purpose, if somebody was to hurt themselves whilst you were organizing it, your trustees could be liable for any injury.
I think they've got it, it's written in the constitution that they would not be, and we are fully insured, and there's requirements. So we go on training, we're all qualified, we have safeguarding qualifications, time to lit. So you name it, we have it. We do risk assessments.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, 'cause
moving forward, I think maybe we'd be a community, is it a community interest company or something rather than
There's a community interest company or a community interest organization.
yeah.
A community interest company can charge and it can make money, whereas a community interest organization is more akin to the charities that you see. So it wouldn't actually, it can raise funds, but it can't
that's
make.
the charitable incorporated organization.
Yes.
CIO.
I believe so. I'm working off the top of my head. I could get it muddled, but I'm pretty sure a CIO is a, is the one which is not the money making.
Yeah, you're a charity, you're incorporated, but you're not a charitable company. So you don't have to comply with companies law. Whereas if you're a charitable company, you have to comply with charity
Companies
law.
Act, yeah.
But I mean, I think, I'd imagine most sports clubs, they're not charities. So it's not unusual in that sense.
No, they're not, no.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the question, it's not, if we're going to use, if we're voluntary administered, they shouldn't be paid in kind at all, or children given any discount, because it seems it would be, well, yes, it's an in-kind benefit. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. What does your articles of association say? Does it say that you can't make any payments or anything to trustees?
Doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It just says that where they're volunteers. Yeah.
Does it give you the option of engaging them as or engaging them to provide services which they normally provide? Because if it does, then you can pay them and you're not in breach of your articles.
Okay.
But
how
you'd
would
have
that
to
be worded? How would that be worded?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have I don't have any articles in front of me, but
okay.
it probably say that the trustees or whatever they're called in the articles, the governing body, either cannot be paid for any of the work, or they can be paid expenses only, or that they can charge for their normal services provided to the charity.
Okay.
Other than the work that they're doing as a trustee.
Okay. I think, I've not read it recently, but I think it may be they are allowed to be paid expenses.
Okay. Yeah. So that would stop you. That wouldn't allow you to pay them for actually coming on and supervising or assisting, because as trustees, that's what's expected of them. So you'd have to probably amend your constitution in order to allow them to be paid for reasonable services they provide, apart from their role as a trustee in managing the organization.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, a classic example would be, I won't use the example of a lawyer. Let's use the example of an IT specialist who's on the board and they're advising the charity or the organization as to how best have what systems, and then something goes wrong, and the organization needs an IT expert to come in and fix a problem. If the board member and their constitution allows it, if the board member comes in and does that work, they can charge for it, because that's not for their role as a trustee, that's their role as an IT specialist that the company would be paying for anyway. That could be lawful. But if the constitution says you can't pay trustees full stop no matter what, then that trustee couldn't come and do that work, or they could do it but couldn't be paid for it. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm involved in several different organisations. It's all rather puzzling.
Okay.
I look after local exchange trading groups.
Okay.
You don't hear about them much, because they sort of got supplanted to some extent by time banks. It's lets, and the idea is that you get people can help each other, and they can use these tokens, their own community currency, to pay each other.
Okay.
And then Let's Link UK had this model constitution, which we've more or less followed.
Okay.
And it's most Let's groups simplify it. They just dumb it down, you know, because it's quite long. But in the model constitution, they've got trustees. I think it's chairman, secretary, vice chairman, and treasurer. And
Yes.
I assume that those are the people that wouldn't get paid. And then Let's groups vary, but they usually organize it so that they take a fee in the local currency, like a monthly bank charge, as it were, or an annual fee. And then people who are working on all the different things that need to be done, like organizing meetings and doing the accounts in the local currency and all these things, and supporting the members with digital access and all that stuff, they can claim payment in the community currency, and then somebody has to manage that. But quite often the Let's groups just dumb it all down, and they say we're the core group, and so any time I've tried to I haven't tried very hard, but when I've tried to get funding, for Let's Link UK as well, and they just say you're not fundable, they just sort of take one look at it and say, you know, you can't fund anything like this. But
yeah,
so one group of activists, and I've often wondered about this, they said, well, actually this is a co-op.
okay.
Why don't we set this thing up as a co-op? And originally, the guy who first came up with the Let's idea, he thought the whole thing was a business. And it was only because the founder of Let's Link UK said, look, actually, this is a community organization. They went off in two different directions. But these new activists are sort of saying this must be a co-op. And that would alter it. And a co-op would be more or less like a business, wouldn't it?
That's potentially, yes. But depending on the aims and objectives of the co-op, it could be a charity. Again, it comes down to...
Yeah, I mean, the aims are partly to relieve poverty in a sort of roundabout way, because you're figuring out a way to save people money. By you know, using each other's skills and recycling things, you know, make, do and mend, all that kind of thing, and borrowing tools and all that.
You could put it down the advancement of community development. That might be a better one.
Yeah.
Because it's a community initiative rather than relief of poverty. It's community development.
Yes, it's really about friendship, you know, forming a network and mutual support, that kind of thing.
It's not necessarily a charitable objective. It could be, if it was, or it potentially could be, the ultimate decision would be the Charities Commission, but potentially it could be, but it's not something that's clear cut by any means. I mean, community cohesion, community interaction, social networking, they're not traditionally charitable objectives, but depending on what the focus is, it could be that would need quite specific advice and examination before I could.
One of the problems is that you're inevitably dealing with vulnerable people, and you actually have to be quite professional about it. And the reason why they set up the time banking model, they gear it up in a certain way that you can employ somebody, whereas with the Let's, you can end up with, you know, one or two people struggling. It's meant to be a team effort, but you know, one or two people struggling to get it together, and then they're getting older and they just can't do it anymore.
Yes.
So unless it's fundable, you know, it sort of,
Yeah.
it doesn't have that professional approach that's needed for caring for people.
I will say that I know at the beginning you mentioned the 4 people, the chair, vice chair, treasurer, and I think it was the secretary.
Yeah. So it's like a 2-tier. That constitution had a 2-tier thing. So they would be overlooking it. Then you'd have a working team who the trustees were kind of keeping an eye on. Does that make sense? I think that's the intention of it.
Was that working team elected, or are they?
Yeah, they elect them. And
then they would be trustees.
Or the core group. No, they're not. I think they're all elected.
Yes, anyone who's elected to run the organization, no matter what they're called, are trustees. If it's a company, they'd be called directors. Whether they were, dealing with the day-to-day running is a different thing altogether. But
but there's a
they are trustees, so they would be stopped from benefiting from the charity or the organization unless your constitution allowed them to.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between people who are in post to look after the organization in terms of managing the finances and the sort of, the overall.
Yeah.
And then you've got people who are working kind of on a daily basis with the members, doing member support and, making connections with people and, arranging the events. It's a different kind of thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are doing both, quite often.
Yeah.
Both.
I think that's more of a practical distinction rather than a legal or a constitutional distinction. Yeah. If the constitution allows trustees to do that, then they are trustees discharging their functions regardless of the activities they're carrying out. So whether there's 2 different sets or 3 distinct types of trustees or 4 or however many, they would still be covered by the constitution and the rules in place.
Yeah. So you think if you were trying to get funding and you were told you need to set yourself up as a charity, the fact that some of the people are getting payment within the organization with its own currency, it's not money, you see. It's an exchange token.
Yeah, unfortunately, that requires a much more detailed conversation that I could probably have with you here.
Complicated.
Yeah. That I couldn't advise you on that on here, and that would need serious consideration on all the intricacies and all the details before you could be advised on that. Actually. Apologies. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Anything else, Mary? Yes. Any other questions, Mary? Or
no. Well, thanks for trying. That's it.
Not a problem. I mean, don't give up hope. It can be done, possibly, but it will need it'll need some serious amount of work to get it there. And I think, Margaret, were you putting your hand up?
Yeah.
Hi there, Margaret.
Hi. We're a small charity. We've been going for quite a while now. Mm-hmm. And we've only just got a paid worker.
Okay.
In the last few months. Some of our people are trustees and some of our people are management committee.
Yes. Okay.
And I'm just not really, because they all do the same work.
Yes. Some constitutions allow certain trustees to be responsible for a number of things, and the rest of the trustees not to be specifically responsible. So it's like, how could I explain it? Your management committee is the trustees who are going to be running the organization on a day-to-day basis, who are going to be responsible for finances, for legal matters, for dealing with outside organizations. The other trustees will be there to support them, but they won't have that responsibility that the management committee does.
Ah, I thought it was the other way around, you know, because I thought the trustees were the more important people because all their details are sent up to the charity commission. Whereas
Okay,
the management committee don't have that.
So the management committee is not elected?
They're elected, but we have a differentiation. There's certain people that's on the trustees, so their information is lodged with the charity commission.
Okay.
But the other people, they don't want their information lodged with the charity commission, so they're just committee members.
I think you should have this conversation with me separately rather than on here. That's something I need to discuss with you. But yes, that's something you'd need to.
Yeah, I mean, because I think in the eyes of the charity commission, the important people are the trustees. Because if you're saying there's a management committee, but they're not trustees, that's not really complying with the charity the laws of the requirements of the charity commission, because the charity commission requires transparency in terms of who the trustees are. You can see them on the website in terms of your section on the website about your charity. So if they are, and that's where the full responsibility lies with the charities, the trustees who are named. So people who are not actually fully accountable as trustees don't have the same level of obligations.
So do we have any other questions or?
I do see a question from Philip on the chat, but before that, Margaret, if you need any further advice, you can send me an email and I can book an appointment with Nazim and you can take this forward. I think he would be available to provide 15 minutes or so of a one-to-one session if you really need it. Going on to Philip. Philip mentioned that this is something we were discussing earlier, that if the charity needed to employ someone to carry out some skilled work, but and he has those skills, but if he had to go ahead and get that job done, it would be a conflict of interest. Is that correct?
Conflict of interest is probably not the right term to be using in this situation. If the constitution, I mean, it depends on the type of employment. So if, Philip, you would need to be employed on a regular basis and you would become an employee, then yes, you cannot become an employee and still be a member of the management committee. That would be a conflict of interest. And
no, it's a one-off job.
And is this part of your normal trade?
Yes.
Okay, in which case it depends on the constitution. So if your charity or your organization's governing document, the articles of association say any trustee can offer their normal services to the charity and be paid for it at a reasonable rate, then it's fine. But if it says charities cannot be paid for any work that they do, then that's the bottom line. Then you couldn't. So it wouldn't necessarily be a conflict of interest. It'd be whether or not it's varies, whether it's allowed by the constitution.
Okay, thanks. I need to go back and read it.
Yes, yeah, it's not a nice place to start, and it's probably a little painful, but that's probably the best place to start.
No, it's just that, in this situation, I could do it cheaper than getting somebody else. So why not pay me to do it?
Do you know what? I've been a trustee for a large number of charities, and some charities are cognizant of this fact. They're alert to it, and they have a clause which says that trustees can do provide services to the charity for a reasonable compensation, but other constitutions don't allow it, simply because when the charity was formulated, that wasn't something that they were thinking about, and they've left a standard term in or something, and that would need to be changed actually. And it makes sense for trustees to be able to offer their normal services to a charity at a much reduced price. But if the constitution doesn't allow you, then unfortunately you're going to be limited.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
But an amendment on this, an amendment on this is possible.
Yes, yes, I believe so. You'd have to follow the constitution requirements on amending the constitution itself.
Based on the structure.
Yeah, so it might be that you have to put forward an amendment proposal at the AGM and it has to be voted in. Once it is, you can change that, but you'd have to notify the Charities Commission as well, would have to agree once you'd ratified that. So it can be a bit of a long-winded process, but it is possible, yes.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
I have one question.
Sure.
The clauses as per structures to amend a written rule, as you would say, the article of association.
Yes.
As per structures, is that specified at the Charity Commission, or does it change as per specific organizations? I mean, what they have previously set in their articles, that maybe we would have to have 50% of the trustees voted. Would it follow that, or would it follow the structure of the organization as per rules or governing rules by either the company law or the Charity Commission?
So the Charities Commission doesn't actually have any specific rules themselves as to how you change your governing document or amend it. They expect you to follow the rules that are contained in the Articles of Association. So it's what is said in the Articles of Association that has to be followed. Once you've done that, you have to tell the Charities Commission that we've done this, and they have to approve it. But it's not, their approval is based on considerations possibly such as whether you followed the correct procedure, whether it's a valid amendment, and whether the amendment impacts on your charity providing a public benefit on a charitable object, and whether that's going to be affected, whether there's a reputational damage or risk of the charity being misused or brought into disrepute by any of the amendments. And that's what they'd look at more than anything.
Thank you.
Okay. Do I take it? Does anybody else have any other questions? I don't see. Take that now. And we are pretty much an hour later. Okay. Yeah, so thank you everyone for listening to me talk. It's not often I have such a captive audience, especially not on subjects like this, but thank you very much. And hopefully I will see you at some of the other sessions.
Next week.
Yeah, next week. I mean, we are trying to provide sessions which you might find helpful in your day-to-day running of the organization. So if you do want anything specifically, get in touch with Nayoka and we can see if we can arrange something. Philip wants to know how he can get the document. Nayoka, shall I let you answer that?
Yeah, I will be sharing the document with everybody who's signed in today on Eventbrite. We will have another session with Nazim. We hope to have a session at the same time every Thursday, touching on various topics. Our topic next week is employment session. This is with reference to employment contracts, requirement by law and more. And Nazim will give me some more updates on the depth of the topic. This is on July 8th at 5:30, again, a Thursday. So do keep your Thursdays free for 1 hour and join us and or get on the road of learning something more.
I mean, if you have anybody else who if you have anybody else who you think could benefit from these sessions, let them know, ask them to join or ask them to contact Nioka for a link, because what we're trying to do is provide you with support and guidance on HR policies, employment law, all of those things that you normally pay a solicitor to find out about. I mean, if you need any specific services, that's something we can discuss separately, but the general overview on how you should do things, why HR policies are important, all of that will be discussed in sessions as we go along in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, I mean, it's goodbye from me.
I think there's another question from Aloysius. Sorry.
Yeah, because is it possible to have it at 6:30? I'm just requesting because most of them are working. Is it possible? It's okay Thursday, but if it is at 6:30, more people will join in.
The thing is, we've already set up these sessions, and there's some who do not want to make it too late.
Yeah.
Which is why we picked up the time at 5:30.
I mean,
we do record these sessions, and we do hope that you can join us. If not, I will have all of them set on our knowledge bank on the website, which you will find tomorrow evening, since it's nearly the end of the day. But I do hope you can try and make it for that 1 hour in the evening at 5:30. It's just this month, every Thursday at 5:30.
Yeah. So what is your web page? Where can we get it?
I will send you the link to the website where we have the session recorded today. The only difference being is that you will be able to listen to what Nazim has to say and present, but you will not have the option of asking him your special questions if you're not at the session. I will send the Word document today and the link to where the recording will be loaded onto our website. We are the Ealing and Hounslow Community Voluntary Service, and we have a knowledge bank, which we've put up all the trainings and events that we have for you. So quite a few training sessions coming up and a few funder meets also coming up this week. I'll send that out to you too, in additional information.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Nazim.
Thank you. And if anyone has any specific feedback that would be helpful in how we could improve these sessions, or
yes, before you go, thank you so much for that. I don't know how that skipped my mind, but yes, before you go, I'd really like a feedback from you. I'm putting in a link right now. I had it ready. If you could just click on that link for me, and it's in the chat, and just put in your feedback of what you would have, how the session today was. I'd be really grateful for that. Thank you, Nazim, so much.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Yes, don't leave before you click that link for me. It'll take you not more than 30